Okay, guys, here we are, the midweek show this morning, and interest rates on fixed rate mortgages, according to the BBC, has broken the 6% barrier. Are we heading for doom and gloom? Who knows? QVT. Okay, so here we are. Interest rates breaking the 6% barrier on a 2-year fixed rate mortgage. Let's talk about that in a minute. But what will interest rate rises mean for FIFE homeowners and landlords overall? We're going to be discussing that on this midweek show this morning. A few weeks ago, the Bank of England raised interest rates, the base rates, to 2.25%, and they're expected to be 3.25% by early next year. This increase will make the monthly mortgage payments more expensive for first-time buyers and existing homeowners, an issue which is dubbed by some of the property experts as the property affordability crunch. We've always got a name for something.
It has to be tagged, doesn't it?
The property crunch, the stalemate property market. What's all that about, eh? Do you think this is just all made up to get headlines?
Absolutely, it is. I mean, there's nothing like a strap line to get all the viewers watching, isn't there? And I think that's why these are really great informative shows to be sharing, because actually it does give our viewers some clarity on actually the UK as a whole, but also the FIFE market and how it is impacting us directly, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Let's look at a bit of perspective here. If I can share my screen, and to here, where are we? Oh, now we're asking. Can we see that? Yeah, we can see that. If I change that to that one, well, we'll see that as well. No, we won't. Okay, so this is the headline this morning. We can see here. Apparently, the Chancellor is meeting the bank chiefs as mortgage rates soar. And apparently, a 2-year fixed rate mortgage has now breached 6% for the first time in 14 years. Come on, let's be honest. Is this just all headlines? I mean, I saw something the other day which said, "Oh, the currency is at an all-time high after 2 weeks." So, does that mean if it falls in one day, the currency is at an all-time low in the last 24 hours?
Yeah, I think the headlines and the taglines with the media they're quite dangerous, and they are scaremongering. Jim, we spoke about we were talking about that about the changes in the space of a day, and they're making headlines out of it and getting everybody panicking. But yet, by the time tea time or the end of the day come, it was back to normal again. Do you know what I mean? So sometimes you need to question where the media get their facts and where they base these headlines on.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I think for me as well. So I was going to say there, Jim, I think for me as well, the thing is they're saying 6%, but what they don't say is actually at the beginning of that, the statement before it is the average is 6%.
Yeah.
I don't know about you guys, but I don't want average. I want the best rate that's out there, and you can actually get rates out there it's still under 4%. So yeah, that's the reality, isn't it?
Yeah, well, let's take a look at that then. I mean, we've got that statement here, but look at the average house price, 192,966 in Scotland. Okay, so if we just scroll down and find out what it is for FIFE, the average price in FIFE is 168,599. Okay, so it's 169,000 or 168. Give or take. So let's look at the best mortgage rate deals. I put it in there, 168,000 is property value. You're maybe going to put 10% down. To be honest, this is if it's an average price point. A lot of FIFE homeowners and landlords as well will have a bigger deposit to put down because that's only assuming 10%. But more than likely, if you're moving up from a flat to 168,000 to a house, then you're going to have a bit more equity to put down. So I'm just basing this on a 10% deposit. because you might want to put a little bit more extra to the house, because house prices are still going for about 8% over the home report value. 25 years mortgage term. In here, we'll just scroll through repayment, and we'll not add anything else. We'll just say we're a home mover. Update results, and lo and behold, yep, okay, we've got 5.12. Now that's 2-year fixed rate deals here. So let me just move that out a bit. Can you see the full screen here?
Yeah.
If I take that to not a fixed rate and update, look at where the mortgages are now. 2 years. Initial rate 2.23, 2.7, 2.89, 2.9, 2.99, 2.99, 3, 3, 3, and it's all trackered and discounted deals.
Mm-hmm.
So I would honestly, I'm just going to call out the government and say bullshit, and I'm going to call out the BBC and say bullshit as well, and all these people. If it was Twitter, if they were on Twitter with things like this, you would actually say this is false news and fake news, really.
Mm-hmm.
Because not really a reflection of what's actually happening. The interest rate's actually a lot lower for fixed rate and tracker rate deals and discounted deals. It's only the fact that the fixed rate going above 6% for a fixed rate, and that's the reason, because the banks are very, very nervous about the fact that interest rates could be risen, and this is driven by the Bank of England, by the way. Interest rates could be risen by the Bank of England. That's the problem. That's what worries the mortgage market. That's why they're having to pull or put the fixed rate deals up higher, because they don't know what the volatility and the thinking is behind the Bank of England's thought process. And also that then goes back to the government, who is actually selling us down the river at this point in time. And they're actually just pumping money into the system again. The pound is actually dropping the dollar against the dollar. Therefore, it makes the currency less valuable. It costs more money to bring in imports into the country from America, because you need more pounds to buy dollars now. Therefore, inflation goes up as a result. Therefore, they have to put base rates up as a result. Therefore, guess what? Interest rates go up as well on mortgages. Got ourselves in a right pickle, haven't we?
We certainly have, especially for the woman that wasn't turning.
Well, I would say the UK government's got us in a right pickle, and possibly Liz Truss has got us in a right pickle.
Well, considering she wasn't turning, it's a bit of a massive U-turn on some of the statements that have come out recently, and I think that's what's causing that uncertainty, Jim, isn't it? Because there has been so much change in such a small amount of time. It's impacting every day in big strides, according to headlines, but actually in reality, you've just demonstrated that actually it's not.
No, it's not at all. Because, look at the headline figures for the economy anyway, as it stands now. This is the unemployment rate. So the employment rate is sitting at 75%, right? The unemployment rate, which is the one to measure, is 3.6%. Now, full employment is between 4 and 6%. This is below full employment levels in economic terms. So we're in a great position in terms of the number of jobs filled in this country. There's also the case that there's 1.1 million people chasing 1.3 million jobs. And it's like, and the Conservative Party leads. And I hate to say it, I'm going to call them out. I've not got any gripes against any particular party. But if you sit there and you say your campaign is all about creating jobs, why do we need jobs? There's 1.3 million. There's only 1.1 million people available. So is this just a pure distraction for what's actually going on, the real issues that are going on, which is the fact that they're actually bombing the currency, which is actually affecting bonds, which is actually affecting pension funds, it's affecting all these different things. This interest rate rise, if it has to be, will also damage household budgets of homeowners coming off their fixed rate mortgages in the next 12 months. That's the most important thing here. So how many homeowners are coming off their fixed rate mortgages in the next year? How many, Perry, homeowners are coming off their fixed rate mortgages next year?
It seems quite a large sum, doesn't it? But of the 7.97 million homeowners with a mortgage in the UK, 6.1 million of them are on a fixed rate mortgage that's at an average rate of 2%.
Wow.
Industry stats show around 1.3 million homeowners are coming off the fixed rate in the next 12 months. But even if they are, you've just demonstrated, Jim, if they tie in now, potentially, they can still get under 4% on multiple deals with multiple high street lenders.
The current crop of fixed rate mortgage deals available today have already had the recent increase in the base rate priced for weeks. That's why we're sitting at there. but they're also pretty nervous. So, you know, these can be pulled at a moment's notice. But the only ones that are getting pulled are actually the fixed rate mortgages. The discounted and the tracker mortgages are still staying. They're fine with that. So while we're saying all these mortgages are getting pulled off, it's only 25%. There's 75% of mortgages still available, which accounts for, I think it's around about 3,000 different products in terms of mortgages. Now, at the last credit crunch, there was literally nothing available. And yet there's still about 3,000 right across the board. So liquidity is not the problem here. The problem is, how do we factor that in? I mean, the cheapest 5-year fixed rate deal on a 65% loan to value was sitting right. It's with Danske Bank, right? Because I did it the other day. I mean, we had different figures because I wrote this article last week. We put it all together, but I actually revised it for yesterday, and it's actually Danske Bank which actually do that at a 5-year fixed rate deal. Just see if that deal still exists in the now. We'll have a wee quick look and see. I'm going to add that back on and just see if we can get a 5-year fixed rate and go through this. So just bear with me as I price this in. So 5-year, let's go for that. See if we can go a 5-year. So 5-year update results. We're going to go for a fixed rate and update results. And we're sitting at 5.04, right? So the average mortgage rate, remember, it's 65% loan to value. So I should be taking that into account as well. So just let me jump onto here. 168,123 times 0.65 is 109. So your deposit is minus 168,123 is 58,500, 58,800. Update results. And we are talking about Barclays. So Barclays is still doing a 5-year fixed rate deal for 65% for 4.5. Excuse me, where's the 6% come from? It's the worst case scenario, isn't it? Most homeowners have 65% loan to value in their equity. This is why it's important to use the instant valuation tool or get somebody out to value your property, because when your mortgage comes up for renewal, you've got a new value for the property. So initially you maybe took it out maybe 5 years ago. Property prices have gone up 30% since then. You've put maybe a 10% deposit down at the time, but there's 30% to add on to that now, so it's a 40%. So your loan to value is now 60%. Therefore, you can get rates like this for the next 5 years and lock yourself into it. So I think that's my most important point out of this, is the fact that you can get these really good rates right now. The key here is, and we'll take it on the 3.92, which is Danske Bank. So let's say, what is the difference, right? So what's the difference between mortgage payments between a 2.04% mortgage and a 3.92 mortgage? Now, it's going to be slightly different if you do 4.5, but let's just say it's 3.92 because it was Danske Bank the other day. Say an average FIFE buyer bought their home in 2019 on a 25-year mortgage. They had a 3-year fixed rate mortgage, and let's assume they're fixed at 2.04%, as mentioned, what was said before, meaning that the fixed rate deal finishes next month. They would have 133,900 outstanding on their mortgage, and their FIFE house is worth on average around about 206,000. They would have been paying £570 a month for the last 3 years, assuming they took out that 25-year mortgage. And on the Danske Bank deal above, they would have to start paying £758 per month from November when they come off their initial rate at 100. So that's a rise of £188 per month in mortgage payments. I mean, that's quite a rise for a potential blow to a household budget, along with everything else, isn't it?
Yeah, that's quite a big rise.
It is a big rise, but there are ways around that, though, isn't there?
Well, what other things are people going under pressure in terms of their budget? It's food. Is there anything else?
Utilities.
Utilities. We're coming into winter months, so not only has that gone up. Okay, they've capped it, and they keep talking about this cap at 2,500, but that cap at 2,500 is still double what we were paying last year. So it's okay that they're saying they're capped it, but the reality is, to us, we're out of pocket, aren't we?
All right, we've been saved, but we've not really been saved.
Exactly, we're saved from trebling it.
It's like when they say we're going to increase the pension age to 70-year-old now, and the think tanks they'll maybe think about increasing pension to 70-year-old when from 65, and then when they come back and say it's 67, we go, oh, that's all right then. But they've just increased it by 2 years.
Yeah,
exactly.
They've got away with that. It's like, I didn't see how that's right, but this is what they do. This is what the Scottish government did with the rents, Richard. We're going to do a rent freeze. We're not going to allow anybody to evict anybody with any arrears at all. And now they've come back the other day and done a U-turn and said, oh, but we'll do it. We'll extend the 3 months to 6 months now. So you have to have 6 month rent arrears. We're going to talk about that on Monday, Stuart, Richard, on the Wealth Creation Show, and the fact that the implications of that. But the reality is, that means you've got to do about rent for 6 months.
I know. I mean,
and then you've got to apply to court, and then you've got to wait another 6 months for it to be heard. So you've not got rent for a year. So how do you think a private landlord's going to last?
I know. I mean, we spoke last night briefly about it, Jim, and obviously the 6 months. I mean, it's an improvement on what we already had, or what we were thinking was already in place. But I mean, like you say, you're going to be about a year down the line before you do anything. Just to touch on the £188 for the difference, obviously, with the mortgage payments. I mean, I think we're seeing a lot of people struggle now, or start to budget a lot more because of the cost of utilities and food. And I mean, people have started to think, right, this is what I've got outgoing. So if their mortgage is going to change in a few months or next year, that's going to knock their budget and their spending thought right out of the sink.
Most people are broke before the end of the month.
Yeah, live paycheck to paycheck.
They're going to be able to afford more utility costs, more food costs. Jeanette said it there. More fuel costs.
Just going to say
for your car. Higher prices that you're paying for services as well, because they're in the exact same position. People like subcontractors and self-employed people that come to work on your house or work on your car, they still have to charge a lot more money. I mean, I'm getting charged the other day from an electrician, and it's something like, for 2 people, it's 170 quid an hour. It's like, what?
The cost of contractors.
I'm in the wrong business.
Electricians are extremely expensive at the moment.
Crazy, eh? But that's,
I think it's not just the impact
happening, the knock-on effect.
Yeah, it's not just impact though to all your fuel bills, etc. as well. I think so, as well as people feeling under pressure with those items going up. Currently, the average person spends 15% of their income on leisure activity. So what they're going to have to do then is say, actually, so I've got all of this pressure worrying about my bills, and the leisure things I used to do that I enjoyed, that took me away from my day-to-day grind in life and work and my downtime, I actually can't fully enjoy that now, because actually the money that I spend on that, I'm going to need that to buy my food, pay my bills, add to my mortgage. So suddenly they're basically working to live, aren't they?
Yeah. Which is 15% of the average salary. The average salary apparently is 32,000 times about 1.5, which is £4,800. But that's, that's £4,800 when you think about it. So that's going to have to go to that. But divide that by 12, and that only becomes £400 a month. If you've got the average mortgage and it's going for another fixed rate deal, then you're taking another 188 off of that.
Yeah.
So you're left with 212. By the way, that's the price that utilities have gone up.
Yeah. You've got nothing left.
Yeah. So there's nothing left from that money and then you've got the knock-on effect that has to the leisure industry, because everybody's just cut back from the leisure industry. Therefore, that's going to affect them with jobs and everything else. But then that might mean the saving grace in the fact that you've got more people to fill these current positions which are vacant. However, you have to make sure they're skilled enough to actually do it. And I said it this morning, or maybe last night, on social media, and the fact that our failure to train our workforce for the future is going to come back to bite us as well. So the failure of the government to actually have a sustainable housing policy over the years to build properly affordable and social housing is coming back to bite us. And then also a failure of the UK and Scottish governments to actually train our workforce and make sure there's adequate training out there. I'm talking about things like, and I'm not talking about boots on the ground stuff. I'm talking about dentists. I'm talking about doctors. I'm talking about, physicians. I'm talking about pharmacists. And all these people are needed, and they've actually neglected it for years and years and years about making sure we've got all this proper infrastructure in place for things that like this, it can happen. And people are getting older, and that's why we'll have to have all these amenities available. But it takes ages to actually train these people. I mean, as an accountant, previously, I worked it out. We'd go on a standing start and going to college, and then my professionals after that. It takes you 7 years to become a qualified accountant. 7 years from a standing start. So if you've got to be, and I'm sure it's the same for a doctor, and I'm sure it's the same for a pharmacy, and I'm sure it's the same for dentists. It's 7 years. It's 3 years of hard graft, or 4 years in university if you want to do an honours at the end of it. And then you've got 3 or 4 years in practice, actually learning as you go. So then all these people are about 7 years away from actually doing anything. And I'll bet you a pound to a penny, They've not even got the intake going through the now in order to sustain that. So we're just going to have further ramifications down the road. And that fuels price inflation, that fuels salary inflation as well, which in essence, it's not a trickle-down effect. What we should have, and I'm going to get political, is a bubble-up effect. Yeah? So bubble up means, in other words, it goes down at the grassroots, the money, and then the money gets spent in the local economy, and then the economy then grows up from there. It doesn't go down, it comes up instead. That's where it should be delivered in the first place. It should be the prosperity is where the masses are, exactly where the tax is as well. The tax is on the masses. The tax is on the 2% or 2 pence in a pound on every single person. It's in a big market. Putting 50% tax on a rich person is not going to make a dent in it. If you put 2% on, or 2 pence on somebody that's at the basic level, it brings in a lot of revenue. So why would you then want to cut taxes on somebody at a higher rate if you can cut taxes slightly on the person below, or you can actually inject more money into that lower end of the market in terms of the number of people and actually allow it to grow? And I don't believe in watering the flowers and leaving the weeds, as Liz Truss says. After all,
I mean,
who's the weeds?
Well, exactly.
Are we looking at them right now? Are we the weeds?
Maybe we are, Jim, because I mean, that's one of the things she said, isn't it? She says people should be improving themselves and going out there and getting bigger and better jobs. But how can they go out there and get bigger, better jobs if they're not qualified or educated to be able to do the bigger and better job, to give them the salary? And if they do, you've just demonstrated there how many years it's going to impact them. So actually, it does not change their position today.
Yeah. It's also the skill in the housing market and the fact that you don't have enough people to actually build sustainable houses. I mean, it's all great. You know, the Scottish Government announced that we'll build another 10,000 social and affordable houses every year. But they've failed over the last 10 years by 40% of their target to build houses at all, even with private builders. Even the private builders don't have the resources. They're screaming out for bricklayers. You see them. They've got big banners across their housing estates when they're building saying bricklayers required, all trades required, desperately. So again, this is a lack of skill and expertise. We've failed to train a workforce which is going to sustain our economy in the short term and even in the medium term, because it takes a while for people to come through. Bricklaying isn't just putting a bit of bosh, wallop, dosh, dash. It's no loads of money. Harry Enfield back in the 80s. That's not what it's all about. It's like it is a skill to do that, and it's a skill to get the right proportions of the actual mortar. If you don't get that right, then your house is going to fall down over a period of time because the mortar gives way in between the bricks, and therefore it's unsustainable. And we've all seen that happen where the mortar starts to dissolve. So this is a skill that's needed in our economy, and it's vital to our longevity and our long-term planning. And both governments have failed to actually provide for that. And this is the ramifications of what's happening now. So you're £188 on your mortgage out per month if you have to go into this new fixed rate deal. Yeah, this is the key here. I mean, Perry, what is the key here? How can people avoid this then in the short term?
In the short term, I mean, the key there is actually you extend that timeline that your mortgage is over, isn't it? I mean, if you're at that age bracket and you've got that ability to do so, rather than going for your 25-year deal, there are 35-year deals out there potentially for some. So, you know, that example that you've just given there, Jim, if you were to take that instead of doing it from the term of the 22 years, like you said, you could put that over 35 years, and that increases the payment slightly to 586 instead of 758. But rather than it being £188 more each month, it's only £18 increase per month. So it's £170 a month cheaper. So it's something to consider, I think, when you are looking at remortgages, if you're looking at doing that in the coming 12 months. Okay, you may not want to have that as a forever loan over that tenure at 35 years, but it would resolve your current maybe spending squeeze. Yeah.
Can I just say this is what I did in the very beginning?
Well,
when I first started as a student, we talked about this before, Richard, didn't we?
Yeah.
I took all my debts actually and took the amount I'm paying every single month and worked out the cash flow I needed in order to invest. Therefore, I brought all the payments and I moved out the timelines and I consolidated some of the debts into one, so it would actually be a less of a payment each month. Fair enough, it was maybe a wee bit more you were paying in the long term. But for me personally, I was able to then say, okay, it's only over the next 2 or 3 years. I'm a student just now. We need to do that. I'll get a job, and then when I get a job in the next 2 or 3 years, I'll be able to eat into that and actually pay it down a lot quicker after that. So it's a short-term solution to alleviate your cash flow position, to make sure you can afford your bills and make sure you can afford to eat and make sure you have a roof over your head. That's that's the reality.
That's exactly it. I mean, it will cost you in the long run, but in the short term, when you really need it, that boost to your cash flow really can make all the difference as to whether or not you're able to live your life for the next few months, years, whatever. We just don't know about the longevity of this, but in the short term, it works, and it'll help you give you a lifeline, basically, won't it? Potentially.
Absolutely. Profit is vanity, turnover is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash flow is king. That's exactly every single time. It works for a business every single time. Cash flow is the lifeblood of everything. You need cash to do everything. You can't live on profit. You can't live on turnover because you've got costs to come off of that. It's what you've got in your hand is the most important thing. So what has happened to Fife house prices, Richard? What has happened to Fife house prices?
Well, the house prices, I mean, not many people judge the property market on the property market's health on house prices, and many people do that. But the average value of the Fife property stands at 168,599. And that has risen 30.1% in the last 5 years. So it was 129,530 July 2017. So that's where it was.
I mean,
so that's not bad. But I believe there's a better way to judge the health of the local property market, and I know you'll agree, Jim.
What would that way be then?
And I think it's to look at actual look at the housing transactions, and people might ask themselves, why would you concern yourself about the number of property transactions and not the change in property values? But I think it's important to look at the transactions that actually take place rather than property value to judge the property market. And I'm sure you still agree with me on that.
But why would that be? Why would it be important just to look at the transactions? What's behind that then?
Well, many economists believe that the number of property transactions is far more accurate to obviously look at the health of the potency of the local housing market. There's a greater number of people moving. It's better for the whole economy. So what these changes are being made for, then there's a smaller number of transactions, whilst the same can be said for the higher number of house prices.
It does, and it is quite important. I'm going to bring us back to this, the Scotland house prices for July, and now the August one's going to be out soon. I'll have details of that when it comes out, but so I'll do an update with that. But this is quite important. I mean, we see house prices rising, on average at 9.9%. Overall in Scotland, and then you see Fife itself is 8.8% in the last year. It is actually dropping every month because it's now catching up with itself. So, and that's fine. That's okay. That's what happens. You have the spike, but we're still more affordable here. See in the middle here, when you've got and then here. So Fife is still really affordable in comparison to the hotspots, which is Perth area and then over in Edinburgh. Then you scroll down here, and this is the most important thing to tell you about the health of the property market. This is May 2021 compared to May 2022, year on year. Now everybody says it's like the market's declining. I beg to differ. Overall, look at the numbers for each area. You've got 221 versus 169 in Angus. There's Fife there at 555 the year before, 574 now. So there's more properties in Fife sold this year in May than there was last year. And that's the bellwether. That's where you should be looking at. So, but overall, year on year, you had 8,752 properties sold in May over Scotland last year. And yet the May this year, it was 8,325. That is not much of a drop in terms of the number of activity. So demand is the most important thing, which is the bellwether for the market. Many economists believe that the number of property transactions is far more accurate for that. And I think that as well. A greater number of people are moving home is better for the whole economy, because if you move home, you're creating business for other people, because you're going to get, what's the first thing you do, Perry, when you move home? What do you start?
So the first thing you're doing when you move home, depending on what your property's like, you've got a remover, you've got a solicitor, you've got a bank person involved in helping you find your funds if you need in funds. You've got cleaner perhaps that's going to come in and do your cleaning, your oven. You're going to have new Sky employment, so you maybe take a new Sky contract out, so you need your Sky guy to come out and do your new cabling. You need to switch over your electricity, your energy. I mean, straight away on those items alone, that's about 8 things that involve other people and services.
And what's the thing that most people go for? Yeah, what's the most thing that most people go for? They usually go for carpets and decoration, don't they?
And all your carpets, your decor and everything as well, exactly. So that's multiple stores.
And decor, yeah. You've got your electrician, possibly, because you want to move or join on or create more plugs in the house, because some of the ex-local authorities have single plugs. You want to change them to double. You've got electricians involved. You've got the smoke detectors, heat detectors need to be installed because you move property. You've got kitchens.
Kitchen, bathroom, garden, everything.
Yeah.
So there's a whole load of things that actually do when you actually move a property. If you just wait on property increasing in value, it doesn't create anything. The value of the property isn't that important, because when you're selling your property, you're in the same area, your increase is the exact same increase for the property you're buying. So the only way you're ever going to make money on in the existing property you live in is if you're massively downgrading. You're massively going down to a smaller property, or you're maybe, well, I wouldn't even argue now that you could actually build your property from scratch and make it more affordable, because it's apparently it's a lot dearer to build a house now than it is actually to buy one. And we'll talk about that in the Wealthcation show as well, Richard. So these are all the massive changes they make every single time that somebody moves home. So the most important bellwether, I would argue then, is for that reason, is the number of transactions coming through, which is the most important. So what's going to happen to FIFE house prices? What is going to happen to FIFE house prices, Perry?
I mean, certainly with the homework that we've done, we believe the growth in the FIFE house prices achieved in 21.
We better do a drum roll. Oh my God, wait for it. Because I tell you what, you're maybe not going to like it out there, anybody. But this is what's going to happen, I think.
In 2023, we just can't see it being sustainable, Jim, can we? Yeah. With what's going on just now and the impacts that that's going to make, and the three of us have been looking at all varying articles that kind of are endorsing really that thought process. I think in conjunction with the price cap on energy bills, stamp duty changes, because there has been a UK stamp duty change as well. No, it hasn't necessarily impacted Scotland as yet. The reveal of the rise in the reversal of the national insurance rises, drops in income taxes, it will mitigate house price reviews and potential drops in pricing or slowdown in pricing.
So,
what's your thoughts on that?
Realignment then in house prices?
I think there will be a bit of a realignment from 23 compared to what 22 has been like, and more significant impacts these changes will make, I think, is in the number of people that will be moving. Just what we were talking about measuring the transactions over the next 12 months, and I think that will have a knock-on effect.
I think sorry, Jim.
Okay, go on.
I was just going to say, I think for 2023, people really, from a sales perspective and a lettings perspective, people need to maybe realign their expectations for sale price and rental price and things, because we've had a really busy 2021 and 2022. Prices have went a wee bit, the skyrocketed and things, but we are going to start to level out a bit, and we've all looked at that. And people need to obviously realign their expectation in line with that. So
everybody's been talking about 15 to 20% year-on-year drop in the number of FIFE property transactions in even Scotland and the UK itself into 2023. Yet I believe it'll be lower, probably around 5% lower than that. So I don't think it's going to be as difficult as we seem. FIFE is still extremely more affordable. I've got a funny feeling that more people are actually going to take the decision to move to FIFE. I know it's going to put pressure on the FIFE housing market, but more people are going to move to FIFE, I think, because it's more affordable from city areas, because they can work from home. So I think possibly that's maybe going to be the change next year. I think more and more people are actually going to realise that they could have just a as big a home as they had in the city, but at a more affordable price, and therefore if interest rates go up, they're just paying the same as they were in the city, but they're actually living in a different place. I'm a biased probably, but you could literally live in the middle of FIFE and be within half an hour of a beach on either side, or right around it, because it's more or less FIFE is more or less would I say sea locked instead of landlords.
Yeah.
The majority of Fife on the coastline, the expression "every cloud has a silver lining" actually comes from that sort of scenario, and the fact that the silver linings are where usually the highest price points are in terms of living, in terms of standards, in terms of house prices. That's where that phrase kind of comes from. Every cloud has a silver lining, because it's right around the coast of Fife, and where all the key points are and the highest price points are. So I believe, basically to conclude, I predict that we have a slightly lower house prices and fewer people moving in Fife, but not in the way of a crash that many thought was on the horizon. And we're going to talk about that next week's midweek show, how likely is a house price crash in Fife itself. Before I go, though, let me share his thoughts on whether, here's a classic example with stamp duty. Stamp duty in England and stamp duty in Scotland. Stamp duty in Scotland's never changed with the realignment of stamp duty in England. So this is what happened with the stamp duty in England. Is it a fair tax? Let's be honest. Now, this is almost a topic for a standalone article itself and show itself. Some economists believe that removing stamp duty, which is sometimes a problematic thing, which causes a problem, because if you want to move, it costs you money to move, and that's what this tax is, stamp duty. So, in other words, if you want the market to continue to be quite robust and transactions to be propped up, that's why you need to look at stamp duty and possibly even remove it. That's why the UK government, because their price point in the UK and in London especially is the average price point of 525,000. Could you imagine what the stamp duty is on that? We in comparison to Scotland, the average price point in Scotland is 192,000 in Scotland. So therefore, that's why they don't foresee the reason. I'm not going to speak for them, but I suspect that's why they don't see the reason to actually move anything to do with the house price stamp duty threshold, because first-time buyers are getting up to 140,000 tax-free anyway. They're not getting stamp duty on it. Therefore, the marginal difference for the extra between 190 and 140 is 50 grand, and it's only something like, I think it's 2%. So it's 800 quid. That's it. Whereas in England, it's huge. It's massive. So removing stamp duty, we'll come back to that. They believe removing it, it raises 14 billion in tax in 2021, and replacing that lost income to the exchequer by increasing the council tax on more expensive properties would do a lot more than other intended tax cuts to boost the economic growth. According to some commentators, the way the UK government taxes housing is flawed. That suggests instead of taxing an infrequent property transaction, which is particularly harsh, the government should be taxing living in a house more, especially those who live in a higher priced properties. Does that make sense? I don't think that's fair. Because the way economists are thinking about that, so you've got a tax on living.
I don't think that's fair.
It comes back to the cost of living crisis, doesn't it? The cost of living. All right, okay, so there's a cost of living. Can I not just live and not have a cost? So I have to. It costs me to live. It's like, wow, that's a bit weird and a bit absurd to actually look at it like that. So everybody that lives actually, it costs them. You are a cost to live. It's not a great way of looking at things. I don't think so anyway. Anyway, according to some commentators, as I said, so let's see how viable that is if they want to remove stamp duty overall right throughout the UK. In the UK, even if council tax bands was frozen, the bands at A and D, the lower priced properties that is, and the uplift between the more expensive council tax bands was doubled on each step between D and H. So a typical band D property owner would see their council tax rise from £2,473 to £3,628 per year. And a typical H band will rise from £2,435 a year to £5,790 per year. This is almost like utilities, isn't it? Such a massive increase in council tax would be a political suicide for the wealthy Tory voting homeowners, and only raise, instead of the 14 billion they're getting now, it will only raise 5.28 billion, a long way from the 14 billion it's currently raised. Now, if the 14 billion tax raised were spread evenly over all the council tax bands, the average band D property would need to rise by £490 per year. See how it says about it's the masses that you get the money from. It's not the super rich you get the money from. I'm not arguing for tax cuts, by the way, for the rich. To be honest, we don't want to eat the rich, and we don't want to screw the rich down as most as possible, because then obviously look at ways to mitigate that, and that's sometimes they leave the country and they start to live somewhere else, because that's what happened when it was 90% tax on the rich. When way back in the 70s, that was a crazy idea. A 95% tax rate on the rich people. It's like, okay, so I'm working this extra just for 5%. I don't think there's an incentive there, so that's why we dumbed down our economy, and it went all pear-shaped. So even a band A would increase by £382 per year, something that again would be political suicide. Yes, stamp duty is flawed. It's just every other option has more significant flaws. So, I mean, that's just our thoughts. It'd be interesting to hear what other people's thoughts out there as well, and what they're thinking about, if stamp duty should continue to be there, or should we replace it with something else, and what else would that be? Because we're kind of just showing that council tax, it's not going to work doing that, because it would be political suicide for most parties, but there'd be fundamental flaws in what happens. This almost goes back to the poll tax, and how that would be a great idea. In theory, everybody should pay for the services that they use, but in reality, in commercial reality, that was never going to be possible to implement.
Yeah, it's even the bedroom tax just now as well. I mean, that was almost hampering other people who perhaps for whatever reason weren't able to move from their current properties, because their life limitations or their abilities and mobility issues, or there isn't another property out there that they could go for because there's no other properties being built that suit for them. So they're going to get punished because there's no other facilities.
Well, that's a failure, a lack of the government to actually build affordable housing, so people can actually move to. It's all very well taxing me for the fact that I've got another bedroom that I can't use, or another 2 bedrooms I can't use, but I've not got a place to move to. So I'm stuck where I am. In theory, I often, and I hate to say it, as my former profession has been an accountant, I often think it's just accountants that sit in wee rooms and come up with these ideas. And they have no commercial reality of how that impacts on anybody and how that affects anybody in their day-to-day lives. I genuinely think that's what they do. And I go back to saying what we talked about before, is the country seems to be run by solicitors and economists.
Yeah.
So what's your final thoughts on this, Perry?
I think my final thoughts are that, yes, we're noticing impacts. Yes, we're noticing differences, but don't just look at the strapline headlines. We talk about often, don't we? Look at the facts, go out there and investigate, get yourself a good financial advisor, because none of us are that's on the show today. We're just kind of giving you headline news here in regards to the reality checks of what's impacting M5. So just get yourself equipped with someone that can advise you the best option that's going to make your living easier.
Yeah, absolutely. Richard, what's your final thoughts on this? In terms of the impact for even vitality landlords and homeowners?
That's what I was just going to say, yeah. I mean, to piggyback on what you're saying there, Perry, obviously there is changes in interest rates and things, but especially like you say, obviously I deal with a lot of investors and things who are starting to worry about interest rates and mortgages and things, but they're maybe not as bad as the media is making out. And I think if you're in that position and you're at that point where you're reviewing your mortgage or looking for mortgage products and things, speak to us, we'll point you in the right direction of somebody who knows what they're talking about and get you the best that you can.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. It is actually educate yourself from the right people.
Yeah.
When you hear something in the media, and this is the exact example, a 2-year fixed rate deal has now gone beyond 6%, and it's like almost designed to panic people. But the reality is, remember, there's other deals out there. We've just shown you are significantly lower, and you can even extend your period if you want to give yourself an alleviation in cash flow. One of the things you've got to bear in mind as well is just all about headlines for the media. They don't care about anything else. I think personally, things will level off. We will begin to get through this, but I don't think listening to the media is the great thing to do. I'm going to leave the last word with Magdalena.
I was waiting on you bringing that.
Thank you very much, Magdalena. Liking showing houses. It feels like I see movies. Oscar for you. And until next week, guys, is bye-bye from us. See you on the Saturday show, by the way. We will be talking about, I've not got the article right here, but I know we're talking about something about sales. See you on 9:30 on Saturday morning for the next instalment of the FIFE Property Show. Bye-bye for now.
Bye.
Bye all.